Good evening all. Thanks for joining. I'm Pragati. So I'm here to give a TECHX session on services and dependency injection in Drupal. This is a very basic topic, we are all aware of the services and dependency injection. Just wanted to give a brief on why dependency injection is more important because uh, we mostly tend to use services globally. So I'll just give a brief on how exactly we'll have to use the dependency injection. So what are the topics that I'll be covering today is what are services, what is dependency injection, why dependency injection is important, and a small demo on it. So coming to services, so services is any object managed by service container. So just services is something that is introduced in Drupal 8 for to have the decoupled reusability functionality and to make the services pluggable and also replaceable by registering them within the service container. So Drupal services are defined in the YML files, and so we are aware of core.service.yml file where we have a lot of services defined. So it is nothing but a simple PHP class with some methods defined. So we can access the services and methods anywhere in the application with the help of service container. So next, going on to what is dependency injection. So dependency injection is a design pattern in which an object or a function receives other objects or a function that it is dependent on. It means that we can directly inject the services to the class construct method and it will upload the dependency runtime when it initiates the class. So there are mainly two main functions to execute this dependency injection. So that is one is construct and the other one is the create function. So within the construct method, we define all the services which we need as a dependency injection. And within the create method, help us to create an instance of all the services. I'll just take you to one small demo that I've created. So if you see the code, yeah. So we have this core.service.yml where we have multiple services defined already. So for example, we make use of database connection, entity type manager, or current user, or many other services we make use in our project. So these are all defined in the core.service.yml. So the usage of this is that so we normally tend to use the services directly using a global variable, globally. So let me just take you to I have a simple form created, a simple form to demonstrate this. So the form allows a user with an email field. Here I have only just one field which validates the email. And based on the validation, it will also validate if the user is a logged in user or a logged out user. So let me just go take you through the without dependency injection, how this form is built. So here, firstly, we define a namespace, namespace, and then we have a form base, which is used to for creating a forms in Drupal. And then we make use of this form state, which provides structure for managing form values and state during form submission and validation. Before that, we'll have to define it in our routing file. Without dependent, this is something that is unique. Then we'll define the path where our form, a path for the form, and default will define contains a default option for the road. So form specifies that the form class that will be invoked for this road. So firstly, then if you check this without dependency injection, here's the class that I've defined here. So we are extending the form base class, which is used to which will inherit all the basic form functionality from the form base. And then I have one field defined here that is a text field for email, and then a submit button. Later on, I have created a valid form a function which is used to validate the email. So here the way I have used the services as a globally I have included the services. So Drupal is a Dora services email validator, which is a service which is used to validate the email. Yeah. So here, this will validate the email. Based on that email validation, we get the email if it is valid or not valid. Next, I have created a submit form. Here, if you see, I'm going to fetch the current user's detail. So again, here, if you see, we are just directly making use of this services, current users. And yeah, and then we are checking if the current user is authenticated. Based on that, again, the messenger services is also used directly here. Yeah, we are using it directly. So instead of this, the functionality wise, both without dependency injection, here the functionality wise it will work in same way. So for example, if I just try to hit an invalid URL, we get a message that the address is invalid. Or if I try to give a valid email, then it will say that the form is submitted by the logged in user. Or if you just try it at the logged out user, yeah. So this is say that the form is submitted by the anonymous user, or if you give any invalid email ID, then the address says that the form is invalid. So this is how the form is built without using a dependency injection. Now let us just compare it with how the same form is implemented using dependency injection. So this is something that we have. So again, we'll be defining it in the routing file with a path, and the class is also defined. So coming back to the form. So what is that we have to include when we are using it when we are using a dependency injection? So again, namespace to define the namespace for the class. So in Drupal, yeah, namespace. Next comes the usage of this. So use statement is basically used to import any classes or interface from the other namespace. So allowing the current class to refer them, but without needing to specify the full namespace every time. So that is, we'll have to first define it at the beginning itself. So here we can see that this is something that is a new compared to here. So what is this? Is a interface for the service container which manages service dependencies. So next is same as the form base, which is used to provide the default implementation for many form methods. And again, the form state interface is used to define form state object which stores information about the current state of the form. And next comes the another email validator interface, which is used to interface. It is an interface for validating the email address. And the next one is interface representing the current user account. And the third one we are making use of is interface for the messenger services, which handles displaying message to the users. So next, moving on, so we are extending the form base here, like how we used to extend the form base for a form. So yeah, so then we are going to define we are going to define this. So we have given it as a protected email validator. So protected here means that it indicates that it is accessible within the class and its subclasses. And email validator is a property to hold the email validator services instances. Next one that we are defining is again a protected account, a dollar account. So property to hold the current user account services instances. And third one that we are defining here is messenger, which is again used to hold the messenger services instances. So next comes the construct form. So here in the construct form, we describe different parameters. Tags describe the parameter, including its type and its purpose. So this is the email validator. This is for the current user, and this for the messenger services. So next, the constructor. What this constructor is all about is automatically called. This constructor is called when a new instance of class is created. So these are the parameters that we are injecting here. So first is the email interface. So email interface is a parameter with the protected class, that protected variable that we have defined. Next is the account interface. Injects the current user account services. And next is the second. Yeah. Next is the message interface, injects the messenger services. So next, inside the constructor body, we have got, we assign this as a, so here if you see, we are assigning the injected email validator to the class property. Similarly, we are assigning the injected account services to the class property, and the same thing for the messenger as well. We are assigning the injected messenger services to the class property. So the purpose here is to initialize the class property with the injected services, enabling their use throughout the classes. So next thing that we'll have to do is to create a method. So this method indicates public static function, a create. So static here indicates that the method is static and it can be called without an instance of class. So create here is a method used by the Drupal to instantiate the class with its dependency. So these are the parameters. So here the container get email validator, the services container providing access to the service. The container, this thing is providing the service container that provides access to the service. Next, we have a return new static, creates a new instance of class. Then the arguments that we passes here, we see a container get email validator. So this retrieves the email validator service from the container. Again, when container get current user means it retrieves the current user service from the container. And a third messenger get retrieves the message service from the container. So next comes the build form, which is similarly there's one field that is for the email field and one action button. So that remains same. Next comes the validate form, validating the email. So here if you see, we have directly used the email services, the email validator, and is validate, and we pass in the value. But here we are making use of a dependency injection, this email validator. So something that we have defined here, this email validator yeah, is valid. So we fetch the value, we get the value of email, and then we validate it. So so retrieves the value, and this email validator calls the is invalid method of the injected email validator service to check if the email is valid. Next is a validate form. In the validate form, we get the value of the email and retrieve the value entered in the email field and assign it to the variable email. Next, we check if the email is empty. This remains same. Again, we make use of this called the invalidate email function, what we have defined here, and checks if the helper method to check if the email is valid. Next, we set an error message if the email is not valid or valid. After that, again, we have a submit function. So wherein we define, where if you see here, we have we have now used a dependency injection where this account ID calls the ID method of the injected account interface, interface to retrieve the current user's ID and assigns it to the UID. And then it checks if the user is implying the user is authenticated or not. Based on that, here again, this messenger is something that we have adds a message to display the if the user is logged in as an anonymous user or as a authenticated user. So this is how the if you see a dependency with and without dependency injection. So this is the difference that we can make out. So why is it important to have dependency injection is, so if we compare it with the dependency injection, and there are so many pros and cons when it comes to with and without dependency injection. So there are some key points. So without dependency injection, so here we are making use of global service container, that is Drupal services or Drupal user current. So with dependency injection, we are going to inject service through constructor, just that like how I have explained. So secondly, service handling. So this is a hard-coded service. So we just define it globally, Drupal service, and call any service we want. But here in this, with the dependency injection, we are going to pass it as a dependency, promoting flexibility and decoupling. Third point is that service retrieval. Every time the service is needed, it's retrieved to using a Drupal services. So every time we'll have to call it again and again. But here, once we inject it via constructor, we can reuse it throughout the class. We need not call it, define it again and again. Next, next is for the testability purpose. So harder to test because of it depends on the static service call. But when it comes to dependency injection, it is easier to test because it depends on dependency can be mocked and injected. When code flexibility, it is less flexible, tightly coupled to global services. But when it comes to with dependency, it is more flexible, following the best practice for modularity. So reusability, like I mentioned, it is we can reuse it. We need not define we'll have to define it again and again, and it is not easily possible to swap. But when it comes to with dependency injection can be replaced or mocked or altered externally without modifying the form. Performance, so without dependency injection is preferred if it is a very small project or not really, it is not really fast. Even if it's just a small project, then we can make use of this, but ideally it is not recommended. So performance is more when is better when we use with dependency injection. So it is always the best practice to use dependency injection for larger and complex project because it ensures the testability, modularity, and the performance. Using without DI in a small project, like I mentioned, it is preferred, but it is not ideally a good practice to use services directly. That's just a small topic that I had that I wanted to cover. Let me know if there are any questions.